Welcome back to our attendees. Our next speaker, Helene Panzarino, Director, Center for Digital Banking and Finance at the London Institute of Banking and Finance. Today, speaking on today's topic, Fintech, corporate partnerships, take them from going nowhere to going somewhere great. Over to you, Helene.
Thank you very, very much, Melwin, and very much pleased to be here. Thank you for having us with you. And that's right, I'm saying from nowhere to somewhere because in my experience, running programs, running partnerships, running co-creation sessions, there are very basic reasons why we sometimes find ourselves disappointed when they don't actually realize what we wanted to achieve. Before I get straight into the partnerships, I just want to set the scene a little bit and talk about how we really got here and what we need to think about. We're all familiar with the fact that the rate of change outside an organization exceeding internally, then we think the end is near. And I'm not a doom monger. I'm not a glass half empty kind of person. And I don't think that incumbent financial institutions are going anywhere fast soon. But we do need to be aware and we do need to think about disruption and what's happened to our industry. Disruption rarely comes upon us overnight. I think we would all agree that we could see in other industries, for example, Spotify in the music industry, it didn't happen overnight. They had opportunities along the way to react and to create new products and services, and they chose not to. So we need to look at that and how it's gone beyond the technology, and then we can figure out who to partner with, when to do it, how to do it, and why we want to do it so that we stay relevant and we stay in the game. What are our choices and where do we go from here? Now, this is a picture of Cassandra. If I could speak to you directly, I would ask you if you knew who Cassandra was as the goddess of prophecies. But she was prophesizing and nobody was listening to her. That was the curse that Apollo put on her. And we could actually ask ourselves if Peter Sands, who was then CEO of Standard Chartered in 2013, was having his Cassandra moment when he said, banking is heading towards its Spotify moment, as we just discussed. Look what happened to intermediaries in the music business, and banks are intermediaries in the financial world. So we should have been moving in 2013, right? It's not like this came upon us all at once, as we said in the very beginning. The writing was on the wall. We all know Facebook owns no content. We have platforms, lending platforms like Zopa or RateSetter. They own no money. Expedia own no airlines and hotels. Business models are changing and we have to be aware, but we're treated to the knowledge from other industries. And so we have to stay alert. Of course, for us, there have been some significant impacts in terms of technology. APIs are transforming financial services and opening the door for us to partner with fintechs, which we're going to look at in more detail. Banking as a service is enabling some banks and some smaller banks to service other banks and fintechs in terms of partnership in a marketplace model or platform model, for example. And open banking as a regulation is enabling the consumer, be they a business owner or an individual, to share their data, to be able to get a more hyper-personalized product and service, and thereby allow fintechs into that space where the data, the trusted data that's been in silos and incumbent banks needs to be shared for the greater good of the consumer. So we are aware of some of the things that are happening around us. And Francisco Gonzalez, when he was chairman as BBVA, said fintech threatens to eclipse banks that don't adapt digitally. But what about big tech? So before we look at the fintech, we must pay one nod to big tech. They're not banks. They might be. Some of them actually have banking licenses now. We always talked about whether or not they would bother to regulate themselves, the pros and the cons of that. But one thing is sure, they have data. They have trust, particularly of certain generations who are more digitally adept. It's very easy to access via technology, and we see this now with embedded finance. And we have to ask ourselves, should we worry or should we partner? And we're seeing partnerships in the big tech area emerge, be it Facebook and some of the banks for their currencies, Amazon with JP Morgan, right, the largest e-commerce platform and the largest bank in the US, Apple, now with Goldman Sachs, had a relationship with Barclays and also had to control themselves even more on Apple Pay. And Google Pay or Google Pay Plus partners with over 110 banks and credit unions. So the lines are blurring where we should partner. But what is sure is that fintech has brought banking to a critical juncture. Incumbent institutions need to adapt to survive. And typically, we would look at digital change, digital transformation in the banking environment from a project, which was long term. From a business perspective, we have a strategy, it's customer centric, we have cross functional teams, but we're not as flexible and agile and quick to market as we could be. Whereas digitally built from the bottom up and the top down is a pure digital model. And that's where we have quick iterations, lean IT, and frequent upgrades, which the current day consumer is demanding, be that as a digital bank or from us as incumbents in any other way that they interact with us. It's no longer enough for us to work with COBOL code on mainframes, COBOL code back to 1969, she says, but we've had to embrace the cloud. And I can remember in 2017 working with fintechs and incumbents, and the cloud was like a dirty word. So we've obviously realized that there are gains, efficiency gains, cost gains from the cloud, but also the amount of data we can process from the cloud. And not one cloud, but mixed clouds, hybrid clouds as well. So that brings us to the ability now to partner with fintechs in a much more comfortable way. And why do we do that? We create new value-add products and services for customers because fintech is all customer-centric, customer-driven, and we should be too. New technologies, fintechs are like the R&D for banks because we don't have R&D departments in banks, really, as you do in other industries. You can capitalize on regulation change. So open banking, which started here in 2018 in the UK and is now spreading out around the world. Everyone is looking for what open banking can bring us and bring the consumer to create new business models, new sources of revenues. Because if you are in an interest-bearing environment, for example, with near zero interest rates, we have to look for other ways to generate revenue. You want to be known as an innovator, don't you? It's great for customers and for customer attraction. And you want to inspire the rest of your team to think differently, to look for opportunities where fintechs could provide solutions for customers. Ralph Hammers, who was one of the greatest innovators, in my opinion, in the incumbent world, who's now at UBS but was at ING, realized that it wasn't only from the inside, from moonshots and internal programs, but it was from the outside and partnering with fintechs that innovation would happen. And generally speaking, when we look at how we partner and how we collaborate, we see different partners and players. Big tech, we've just looked at, right? Very big, multinational, banking license not. Global banks, very big, multinational, licensed, but complex and deep legacy system problems. Smaller banks, regional banks, community banks, depending on where you are. Smaller footprint, not the same amount of IT power, fewer legacy issues, but not so known outside their own space. And then the fintechs that need finance, they need to scale, they need data, they need us as partners from the incumbent world as to really reach their pinnacle. And then, of course, now we're looking at core providers who are having a kind of, let's call it an implementation layer or a buffer between our core environment and the fintechs on the other side, using APIs to connect those fintechs, working more with the fintechs to bring the solution to us via platforms. And there are stages of this change. Typically, we see adapt. We're taking new channels. We're looking to take the cost out. We're using new channels, for example. We're evolving where this turns into new products. And then we're rethinking, maybe we have a new business model. And actually, potentially, we might have a new business that we launch outside of the mothership, for example. That's typically how it works, isn't it? And one example here would be online chat. We start with online chat and we adapt the way that we communicate with our customer. That turns into the chatbot with some of the housekeeping, the frequently asked questions that we can not have to take up a lot of resource for. That might turn into a rethink in a new business model of robo-advice, for example, which could potentially turn into a new business that then gets licensed to other financial institutions or fintechs and becomes a revenue generator. And you can see I've gone through a variety of adapt, evolve, and rethink. When we're doing this, all of our innovation and changes in digital transformation, we need to ask ourselves, is it better for us to build it or should we partner? And sometimes we see these happen at the same time, don't we? Sometimes people are building and partnering. Banks need the agility, the innovation, the speed. Fintechs need the capital, the data, the customers, the credibility, and help with regulation. And typically seeing this, we see either the satellite, as we saw with BBVA, for example, in Simple back in 2009, I think, in the US, a high financial commitment on that one. We see the merger or the acquisition where we saw Goldman Sachs actually acquire a final in California to get a new market share. We see the channel of distribution. We saw RBS and the lending platform Funding Circle, for example, low brand commitment, low financial commitment. And then we saw Tink, which was originally a supplier with ABN AMRO, now, of course, is owned by Visa before they went out on their own, which was a high brand commitments. And that actually paid off for everyone. But this is typically the way we see the engagement with fintechs. And we have some other examples there. What's important for us is to remember that we shouldn't do the innovation theater with the fintechs. They have moved on, and you are looking to engage in good partnership with a scale-up fintech. Enough financial resource, enough human resource, enough physical resource, and existing frameworks to be able to bring a product or service to a larger audience. Are their values aligned with yours, or are they signing up and then going off to raise more money or leave you in the short term? Have they had any reputational risks, problems, KYC, AML? It comes up a lot for you to ask. Are they regulated in your area, or can they be? Can they make you stay compliant? Once you've made the decision to work with them, be clear on the scope of engagement, be clear on the problem statement, be transparent in how you onboard them, and be swift in how you onboard them. Identify somebody internally to Sherpa or guide them through that process. Have regular check-in points, not a year later, every few weeks or months. If possible, validate the solution in a sandbox environment and make sure that procurement and compliance are on board from day one. Really simple, basic steps, but these are the keys to making this partnership go somewhere instead of sit nowhere, as 75% of them often do. Ask yourself questions before you start on this journey. Have you already addressing this problem through some of your existing sales channels, but you're just not talking to each other? Is there room within the pricing model for this to work with you? Where is the data stored and handled? And does that fit with you? Is it robust enough? Is there a genuine value add for your customers? Who internally needs to lead this? Who has the use case? Who has the budget? Who will provide that Sherpa role? And where are all the teams that need to come together to bring this to life? And if you're investing, why are you doing this? Is it just for an internal solution, or do you plan to use this as a revenue generating solution for yourselves? So banking has been disrupted for centuries, but now it's a digital disruption. It's fintech, it's big tech, but it didn't come upon us out of the blue. So planned, balanced partnerships are vital. Going beyond the basic financial services requires vision, courage, and commitment. And it's great if you have a top-down and a bottom-up buy-in. You may wind up cannibalizing your current customer segments in order to adapt and compete. Just accept it, because defense on the outside is not enough. Get together, it's happening. We see it, for example, we said in embedded finance, and just embrace it. Because as I said, I've gone through years of working with fintechs and corporates. I've watched the innovation theater happen. I've watched the barriers to genuine commercial engagement. It's not complicated. We all know what to do, but we actually have to just get our housekeeping in order, be very clear, very transparent, and make sure that we communicate that and we understand that the fintechs have matured and they are the ones that can help us. And we need to get buy-in from all of our teams. I wish you the very, very best in all of your partnerships, and we're here to help.
Right, Helene, thank you for your presentation. Let's see if we have some questions. So do you do trainings for banks or individuals also, like other than a full-time courses?
We do. Actually, at the center, the digital center where I am, as opposed to the larger LIBF, we have something called the Certified FinTech Practitioner. where individuals can sign up or groups can sign up. And that's a 6-week course, a couple of hours every week, where we combine academia with industry. We bring guests from industry in and we address problems like one session is on partnerships, for example. But we talk about digital banks, we talk about embedded finance, we talk about wealth and robo-advisory, all the things that are happening to us.
And most of your courses are how, let's say someone wants to come, a company wants to send their colleagues to your institute in UK or London. So what are the minimum time frame of a course and what's the maximum?
So they do vary. So LIBF has everything from the virtual, currently virtual, we'll see as we can go hybrid, 6-week, 2 hours, 4 hours every week, to the, I teach on the PG Cert in the MENA region, for example, at the moment, which is a full qualification over 30 weeks. So they can be very long, depending on what it is you want to achieve, or more bite-sized, which is usually geared towards people who want to gain the knowledge and the network. Fintech networks are vital.
Perfect, Helene. Thank you for your time. And
thank you, Milwan.
Hope to meet you in person then.
Yes, I hope we can all see each other soon. Thank you for having us.
You're most welcome, ma'am. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.